There used to be this old pond about half a mile from my house, and for as long as I can remember, it was the one place I'd go when I wanted to clear my head or just fish alone for a few hours. People called it Daryl's Pond, though to this day I have no idea who Daryl was, and there was never anyone who actually claimed ownership of the place. Once in a while you'd see someone else casting a line from the shore, but most of the time it was just me and my little kayak with a rod and a cooler. I'd even stuck a wooden pole into the dirt near the bank where I tied my kayak whenever I wanted to fish from the middle. One late afternoon, maybe around 3, I rode out to my usual sweet spot near the center. The water was still. The trees surrounding the pond cast soft shadows across the surface, and it felt like one of those perfect summer days. I had just settled into the quiet when I noticed a man emerging from the trees across the pond. I didn't think much of it at first. People did show up here occasionally, so I gave him a friendly wave and a smile. He didn't wave back, but he stepped into a small boat that had been pulled up on shore and began rowing toward me. I figured he was another fisherman, maybe looking to chat or ask about the fishing. When he got close enough, I tried to be friendly again and said, "Perfect day, isn't it?" He gave a flat, almost delayed yes, absolutely, and nothing more. His tone was so dry it immediately made me uneasy, but I tried to push past the awkwardness by keeping the conversation alive. "So, you come out here often? Do some fishing?" I asked. He looked me right in the eyes and said, "No, I don't fish." That threw me off. Who comes out to a pond in a boat if not to fish or relax? I chuckled nervously and said, "Well, it's never a bad day just to float and relax, I guess." He didn't respond. He just kept rowing closer until his boat knocked into mine with a heavy thud. The sound echoed across the pond, and suddenly the peaceful atmosphere was gone. I froze for a second, realizing how close he was now, only a few feet away. He was older than me, maybe late 40s or 50s, with rough features and eyes that didn't blink as often as they should. I was only 24 at the time, and there was something about the way he looked at me that made my skin crawl. I tried to act like I was still focused on my fishing rod, like the collision of our boats wasn't a big deal, but I could feel him staring. When I finally glanced to the side, I was right, he was watching me with this half smile that didn't feel friendly at all. I forced myself to hold his gaze, thinking maybe he'd get the hint and back off. But after a few seconds he looked away like it didn't matter. I tried again to break the silence. "So, where are you from?" I asked. He slowly pointed behind him toward the thick woods on the far side of the pond. "Up there." "Oh, you live near Suffolk?" I asked, trying to ground the conversation in something normal. "No," he said flatly, and then nothing else. The pauses between words, his lack of effort to really speak, it all made the air heavier. I asked what made him decide to come out here, and his answer was just as blunt. "Why not?" By now my heart was racing, though I did my best not to show it. The silence between us felt unbearable, and every time I looked away I could feel his eyes boring into me again. The trees around us felt like walls, cutting us off from the world. I started slowly paddling my kayak toward shore, trying not to look like I was in a rush. Maybe if I eased away casually, he'd just leave me be. But when I peeked over my shoulder, he was following, rowing at the same pace, still staring. My voice cracked a little when I said, "What a great day." Just to break the tension. But he didn't reply. By the time I got close enough to shore, I turned to him and said, "I think I'm going to call it a day." He was still looking at me, but now the smile was gone. Then he lifted the side of his flannel shirt, and that's when I saw the grip of a handgun sticking out of his waistband. My blood turned cold. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "I can't let you leave." I don't know how I reacted so fast, but instinct took over. I dove headfirst out of my kayak, splashing into the water and scrambling toward land. My legs carried me up the hill, through the trees, faster than I thought I could run. I didn't stop until I burst through my front door, locked it, and bolted every window. I killed all the lights and crouched low, peeking out through a crack in the blinds. Hours seemed to pass as the sun went down. My house was silent, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Then I heard footsteps crunching in the leaves outside. I froze. A voice called out softly from the yard. "Hey buddy, you up there? You trying to sleep? Sorry, didn't mean to wake you." It was him. The same flat tone, the same voice. My chest tightened, every breath painful, but I didn't make a sound. I crawled to the kitchen, grabbed the phone, and finally did what I should have done from the start. I dialed 911. I whispered into the receiver, terrified that if I spoke too loudly, he'd hear me. The 20 minutes it took for the police to arrive felt like hours. They searched the woods, the pond, the property, nothing. No trace of him. They told me to stay with a friend or family member for a while. I did, and a month later I moved away altogether. To this day, I can't fish in a pond without looking over my shoulder, remembering that man's eyes, his half smile, and the words that still haunt me. "I can't let you leave." My brother-in-law Jack was the kind of guy who always had more than enough of everything: money, toys, attention. And after he married my sister, she stepped into that same comfortable lifestyle without missing a beat. So when he invited me along for a fishing trip on his boat, I figured it would be a mix of bragging and relaxation. But I said yes anyway. At 17, I didn't exactly fit in with him and his buddies, who were older and lived in their own little bubble of wealth. But I thought maybe a day out on the water would be something different. When I pulled up to his place that morning, I was reminded just how much money he had. His house sat right by the bay, with a wooden dock stretching out to his massive boat, Lexi, named after my sister. It was the kind of boat you'd expect to see in a movie, shiny, spacious, even with a built-in grill. We loaded up with food, drinks, and coolers before heading out to sea, and I'll admit, the start of the day felt good. The water was calm, the air smelled salty and fresh, and there was this endless view of nothing but ocean stretching in every direction. Still, hours went by with barely a single fish caught except for the one Jack reeled in, of course, which he made sure we all noticed. While he and his friends started drinking heavily, I laid out on the deck, letting the sun hit my face, trying to ignore the nagging voice of my sister telling me not to touch the alcohol. She was protective, always the buzzkill, but eventually even she couldn't keep track of what I was doing once she started drinking too. By the time the sun went down, Jack had lit up the grill and we were eating burgers instead of fish, which honestly didn't bother me at all. When night finally settled in, that's when things shifted. The ocean at night is both beautiful and terrifying, like floating in the middle of space. The water black and endless, the boat this fragile island in the dark. Everyone but me was drunk or high by then, screaming, laughing, and blasting music until it became unbearable. I tried to distract myself by joining in a game of Cards Against Humanity, and that's when I grabbed a beer from the counter. After a couple more, I loosened up and didn't care what my sister had to say anymore. But as the game went on, a sound from outside cut through the music, a faint voice, almost swallowed by the waves. At first we thought we imagined it, but then we heard it again, clearer this time. Men calling for help. Jack and I rushed out to the side of the boat, and sure enough, in the darkness below was a small, beat-up vessel with two men inside, waving their arms. They said they were stranded, out of food and gas, and needed help. My stomach tightened. Something about it felt wrong. But Jack was drunk enough to think it was just another adventure. He nearly stumbled carrying the ladder over so they could climb aboard. I hesitated, but the guilt of leaving them to drift in the middle of nowhere won out. I helped steady the ladder as the two climbed up. They were both Indian men, looking exhausted and hungry, and Jack handed them leftover burgers without a second thought. They ate quickly, almost too quickly, then asked for gasoline. Jack gave them a spare can, slurred something about being good Samaritans, and let them climb back down into their boat. I wanted to believe we'd done a good thing, but the whole encounter left me on edge. Afterward, everyone passed out one by one, sprawled on couches and cots. while Jack and my sister locked themselves in the bedroom. I tried to sleep, tossing on the couch until I finally got up to get some air. The night was silent, except for the gentle splash of water against the hull until I heard it, the low hum of a motor. Nearby, my stomach sank. I climbed up to the controls and flipped on the searchlight, sweeping the beam across the water. At first, nothing. Then, turning the light further, there it was, the same small boat, only this time, it was moving toward us. Before I could even react, a scream ripped through the inside of our boat, raw and panic. I bolted down the steps to find one of Jack's friends standing in shock, pointing to the corner of the room. He swore he'd seen the figure standing over him before they bolted out onto the deck. Everyone was awake now, including Jack and my sister, confused and terrified. We ran outside, but there was nothing but the sound of water and the faint outline of the disappearing boat. In the distance, the searchlight caught just a glimpse before they were gone. When we checked inside, Jack's wallet and keys were missing from the kitchen table, along with a couple more cans of gas. It could have been worse, but the thought of strangers creeping around while we slept was enough to make my skin crawl. Jack drove the boat back to shore immediately, cutting through the night for long hours until we reached home. We were shaken, but relieved to be safe, until weeks later, when my sister called me in tears. Their security cameras had picked up the hooded men at the front door, fiddling with the lock, trying to get inside. They failed and ran off, but the way she described them, we both knew who they were. The same men from the boat. Maybe they wanted more than food and gas all along. When I was 21, my grandfather invited me to go fishing with him, and I knew right away it wasn't going to be just a casual trip. He was 84 years old, but stronger than most men, half his age, and fishing was more than a hobby for him, it was practically his identity. He had the secret lake he swore no one else knew about, a place where he always came back with coolers full of fish, and he finally decided to bring me along to see it. The drive there was over an hour, winding down quiet roads and eventually onto 2 miles of dirt trails that rattled his old Jeep. By the time we parked, I already felt like we'd left civilization behind. From there, we hauled his small aluminum boat through the woods. I tried to act tough, but after 10 minutes, I was sweating and struggling, while he carried his side like it was nothing. I didn't want to admit that my 84-year-old grandfather had more stamina than me, so I bit my tongue and kept dragging my end until we reached the water. The lake was exactly as he described, completely hidden, ringed with dense trees, and so still it looked like a sheet of black glass. The air was heavy with the smell of pine, and for a moment, it almost felt peaceful. We pushed the boat into the water, climbed in, and paddled out a ways, until he told me it was a good spot. He started showing me how to cast properly, tossing out fishing terms I barely understood, but I nodded like I was following along. When my line finally hit the water, I sat back, expecting him to keep teaching, but he went quiet, staring into the surface with this concentration that seemed strange. At first, I figured he was just being patient, but then I noticed the way he was leaning over the side, as if something under the water had caught his eye. I asked him a question, something simple about how long it usually took to get a bite, but he didn't respond. He didn't even flinch. His eyes stayed locked on the water, his body slowly angling closer. I brushed it off at first, but when I looked back again maybe 20 seconds later, he was leaning in so far it almost looked like he was about to fall over. Concern shot through me. I put my hand on his shoulder to steady him, but the second I did, he jerked as if something had startled him. That's when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of splashing, like something heavy breaking the surface. My grandfather's arm shot forward, and for a split second I thought he was reaching in. Instead, it looked like he was shoving something back into the water. His face twisted with a fear I'd never seen before, and then he yelled, "Paddle, now, as fast as you can." My heart leapt into my throat. I didn't know what he saw, but the urgency in his voice made it clear I shouldn't ask questions. I grabbed the oars and started rowing like my life depended on it. He didn't even bother helping. He just sat there, breathing hard, staring back at the water as if he was making sure whatever it was didn't follow. By the time we hit the muddy edge of the lake, he jumped out and scrambled onto land, moving faster than I thought his old legs could go. I tripped out after him, barely able to keep up, and we left everything: the rods, the cooler, the boat abandoned on the shore. He slammed the Jeep into gear and tore down the dirt trail like we were escaping a fire. I begged him to tell me what happened, my voice cracking with fear and adrenaline. But he didn't answer right away. His hands gripped the wheel so tight his knuckles were white, and his chest rose and fell in heavy breaths. 10 minutes into the drive, when I thought he'd never speak, he finally said in a low, shaky voice, "I saw something in the water. It was coming up, closer and closer. At first I thought I imagined it, but it had a face. It looked human, and then it reached out and grabbed me." He didn't say more, and I didn't push him, but the way he said face stuck with me. A few weeks later, after I'd worked up the nerve to ask him again, he gave me a fuller description, though he clearly hated talking about it. He said it was pale, distorted, almost human, but not quite, and its arm had shot out of the water so fast it caught him off guard. He swore he felt its grip on him, cold and strong, before he forced it back. The part that chilled me most wasn't what he said, but how he looked when he said it, his eyes distant, like he was replaying it in his mind, like he wished he could unsee it. All he left me with was a single line that I'll never forget. All I know is, it wasn't no fish. That was enough. I never asked to go back to the lake again, and he never offered. Whatever he saw in the water, I believe him.